آل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Amma ba'd, brothers and sisters, respected elders, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the treatise of rights of Imam Zainul Abidin, there is a particular right named by the right of the father, in which we will seek to analyze tonight, inshallah. In the right of the father, Imam Zainul Abidin seeks to analyze the relationship between the father and his son, not the father and the daughter. Now, when he sees that in particular fact, he seeks to analyze what rights the father has over the son. And through the hadith, we can look at what type of rights does the son have over the father. And inshallah, by the end of tonight, we'd like to look at a couple of morals that we'd like to put into our lives from the lives of the imams, inshallah. With that being said, please help me in starting this particular topic with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Imam Zain al-Abidin in the 23rd writes in this particular book by the name of Risalatul Huquq. He says a particular line in reference to the father. He says to the people reading, he says, know that your father is the root and you are but a branch. إن أباك هو الأصل وإنك فرعه. He says your father is the root and you are but a branch. And if it was not for your father, then surely you would not have come into existence. Now let's take that particular aspect of Risalatul Huquq, of the particular narration of the Imam, and try to put it into context. Why is it that the Imam starts the right of the father by analyzing the importance of knowing who your father is? Because that's a detailed response that we have to look at. Now when we look at this particular aspect, we'd have to look at the people first and foremost that did not know who their fathers were, to seek to analyze what the importance is of knowing your father. Now let's look at history. Let's look at the time of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. Let's look at the time of Imam Hussein عليه أفضل الصلاة والسلام. What people did not know their father? Because that's what the Imam tried to instill in the right of the father in the treatise of rights. When we look at a person that's very famously narrated by the name of who? Amr ibn al-As. If we delve into the history books, you will find the calamity which is Amr ibn al-As. What's the calamity that's Amr ibn al-As? Look at the life of Amr ibn al-As, look at his lineage, look at his tree. Look at how he was named Amr ibn al-As. That's the first aspect. When we find his mother, Amr ibn al-As wasn't the most decent of women. When we find Amr ibn al-As was born, narrations tell us and history tell us what? That they did not know who the father was. Amr ibn al-As, people came forth and says, how is it that this person is named after al-As? As in when the Quran states, in the smallest surah in the Quran, Surah Al-Kawthar, what does it say? إِنَّا أَعْطَيْنَاكَ الْكَوْثَرَ فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ إِنَّ شَانِئَكَ هُوَ Abtar. What does that mean? Your enemy is the one that shall not have a lineage. When we delve into the history books, let's look at the narration, let's look at this particular ayah. It is speaking in reference to this person named who? Named Al-As. How is it then if this person, the Quran states that he will not have lineage, then people will come forth and say what? Amr is the son of Al-As. That's number one. That's why when we look at the Imams, because everything's in reference to the Imams. When a particular person, we have what? A narration on one aspect. If a particular Imam or a Prophet says you have to do a particular act, you do that particular act. What's the other hujjah that we have? If a person acts in a certain manner in front of the Imam, and the Imam does not say anything, that's a sign of confirmation. That's a sign that that's what you are doing is correct. Because if it was incorrect, the Imam would surely what? Would speak out. The Prophet would speak out in the essence of Amr ibn al-Ma'ruf wa nahi anil munkar, isn't it? Now when we find Ali ibn Abi Talib, never once did he say Amr ibn al-As, isn't it? Look at the battle of Siffin. When Amr ibn al-As runs away, what does he say? What does he call out to Amr ibn al-As? Never does he say Amr ibn al-As. The way Imam used to address Amr ibn al-As is say what? He says, Yabn al-Nabagha, naming him by his mother's name. Because he knew in fact that what? That al-As wasn't his father. Now let's look at this particular figure. If this particular figure can come into history, a person that did not know who his father was, and he was born in the most indecent manner, out of wedlock, isn't it? These are the people that you know that will fight the religion of Islam. Because his essence is not that of purity, isn't it? Let's look at another example. When we look at the tragedy of Karbala, when we come here time and time again in Muharram and we seek to analyze, why is it that one side of the army is what? Is Muslims or so-called Muslims. And on the other side of the army we have the grandson of the Prophet of Islam. How is it that we can differentiate, or one of the factors that gives us an idea of how to differentiate between those that are on the path and those that have diverted from the path? One of the things is the right of your father. What do I mean? When Al-Mukhtar, as you know, when he came forth and he tried to what? Come and take revenge for those people that fought Imam Hussein. Of the people that he caught was who? Was the 10 horse riders that drove at what? That stumbled or trampled on the body of Abu Abdullah on the 10th of Muharram, isn't it? The 10 horse riders that took their horses and trampled on the body of Abu Abdullah. When Al-Mukhtar caught them, the first question was what? Was tell me who you are and who your father is. As in Arabia, you'd know by yourself, and the prestige or honor was that you call your father. As in you find Ali ibn Abi Talib, isn't it? Al-Husayn ibn Ali. And you find this because it's a source of honor. When he caught the 10 horse riders, would you believe that none of the 10 that went and trampled on the body of Abu Abdullah knew who their fathers were? Not one of the 10 knew who their fathers were. To give you an idea of who were the people trying to oppose this message, giving you an idea of what kind of character and what kind of lineage came forth to oppose the religion of Islam. Now let's look at it in the importance of what? Knowing your father figure. Risalat al-Huquq, what does it state? Know that your father is the root and you are but a branch. Meaning what? That you are a reflection of your father. Because what does Risalat al-Huquq state after that? He says, know surely that if you find that in yourself which you find to be desirable, that you find in yourself that you like, he says what? He says, أعلم أن أصل النعمة أباك. What does that mean? Risalat al-Huquq states, if you find in yourself a particular characteristic, whatever it may be, that characteristic could be good, that characteristic could be bad. But in this reference, Imam says what? That characteristic that you find to be pleasurable, to be abundant, to be good, he says, know that the root of that blessing is your father. Because people come forth and state what? If they achieve a particular rank, if they have a particular character, if they reach a high standard in a particular, let's say, workforce or a particular knowledge, they say without a shadow of doubt, my father or my parents had no idea in the matter, no hand in the matter. I did it all myself, not giving the credit deserved towards their parents and their upbringing. Imam Zain al-Abidin, what does he say? He says, أعلم, or know, or acknowledge that the root of that blessing is your father, and the idea of character. That's why we find that Amr ibn al-As or Amr ibn Nabagha, as we want to mention, because he did not know who his father was, and because he was born that of an indecent birth, out of wedlock, we find that what? He would come forth and oppose the message. The 10 horse riders would oppose the message, isn't it? Now let's look at the people that knew who their fathers were and what kind of effect they would have in society. And let's look at it at the height of morals. Let's look at Zain al-Abidin, the person that writes this particular article with the 50 rights in it. رسالة الحقوق, he comes forth. Let's look at the character of Imam Zayn al-Abidin. Imam Zayn al-Abidin, there was a particular incident in Karbala. This particular incident happened after the martyrdom of Abu Abdullah. After he was beheaded, his head put on a spear. After his body was trampled upon. After they burnt the tents. After everything happened. Imam Zayn al-Abidin, a person comes to him with water. Let's look at this scenario. A person comes towards Imam Zayn al-Abidin with water. Imam Zayn al-Abidin is at a stage where he is in need. He is sick. Not only is he thirsty, but he is sick. His body is weakened. That every time he tries to stand, he would tell his auntie Zainab, he says, "Oh auntie, will you not come and help me stand?" He was that weak. Now imagine how much he wanted that water. The person came to him and says, "Would you like the water, O son of Hussein?" He says, "Surely I do, for I am thirsty." The person, what does he do? He takes that jug of water and in front of the eyes of the Imam, in the heat of Karbala, he begins to pour the water on the sands in front of the eyes of the Imam. Now let's look at the stance of the Imam. The Imam is knowing. Allah has given him the knowledge to know who this person is. When the Imam went back to Medina and he was reinstated and he began living back in Medina, this same person came to a famine, to a very depressive state in his life. A state of poverty, that he was outside. He was one of the beggars in Medina. Imam Zayn al-Abidin, what would he do? He would go, and this was known about all the Imams. They would go and do what? They would give bread towards that which is needy. Toward the people in the streets, the people that needed the most. One day Imam Zayn al-Abidin was in the battlefield. And he remembers this. In Medina, what happens? In Medina, Imam Zayn al-Abidin would cover his identity. In the midst of the night, he would go forth. When he would go forth, this particular person that put the water on the sand of Karbala, Imam recognizes him. The person doesn't know it's the Imam. How does he find out that it's the Imam? As in, he is cloaked. Imam Zayn al-Abidin, as you know, he had metals, shackles on his hand and his neck. Imam al-Baqir, what does he say? He says, "When I began to wash my father, I began to cry." Why? He says, "Because I saw the shackles that had burned scars into the flesh of my father, on his wrist and on his neck." The person, how did he recognize Imam Zayn al-Abidin? He says, "As he was about to give me that particular bread, I saw his hand had scars, and I recognized those scars from the 10th of Muharram." Imam Zayn al-Abidin gives him the bread. He gives him the water. What happens then? The person looks at the Imam. He acknowledges it's the Imam. He says, "O person, do you not know who I am?" He says, "Of course I know who you are. I am the Imam." He says, "Then why do you act in this manner, knowing very well what I have done to your father? Knowing very well the stance that I took against you on the 10th of Muharram?" Imam, what does he reply? He says, "We are of Ahlul Bayt." What does that install? That installs the idea that I know who my father is. I know what my father Hussein died for. I know what his father before him died for. I know why is it that they defend the message. And I know what I must do. I will not react in a manner that will put shame on towards my father. I will not act in a manner that put my father's reputation at risk. He says, I will act in a manner which my father will be proud of. Going into the essence of what? He knew who his father was. Puts him into account with who? Amr ibn Nabigha. Look at the difference. Look at the scales. When Amr ibn al-As in his tongue, what does he say? In reference to Ali ibn Abi Talib and Muawiyah, in his own tongue, what does he say? In a very long line of poetry, what does he say? He said, أغويتنا من جهلنا يا ابن هند. Isn't it? He says what? He says, you have diverted us from our arrogance, O son of Hind. Referring to Muawiyah. He says, على النبأ الأعظم الأفضل. Over a person, you have diverted us from a person that is surely greater than you. على النبأ الأعظم الأفضل. He says what? Then he says أين الحصى من نجوم السماء وأين معاوية من علي. صلى على محمد. That's the enemies of Ahl al-Bayt talking towards Ahl al-Bayt, to give you the idea of the characters. Now furthermore, let's look at the Imam. What else does he tell us about how to treat our father? What guidelines does he give us so we can instill towards our fathers? One of the things he says is what? The Ahlul Bayt say that do not call your father by his first name. Why do they say that? Look at it nowadays. You look at the channels that we look at on TV, channel 7, 9 and 10, whatever it may be. The shows that you would find such a show such as, let's say, The Simpsons. As in the son would always call his father what? By his first name, isn't it? Call it Homer, isn't it? When he would call him by his first name, it would instill in the children that what? It's okay to call our fathers by their first names. The Imam says what? The Imam says do not call your father by their first name. As a sign of what? First and foremost, it's a sign of respect. To let you know that he is your father. The Quran says what? وَلَا تَقُولْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا. Do not even utter that particular sound in hatred of them or in anger towards them. He says that's the level of respect you should have. Do not even call your father by his first name. Number one. Number two, the Imams say what? When your father comes into a gathering and you are sitting, stand from that place in respect of your father. When your father is walking, make sure that you do not exceed him in the walk. Make sure you're not in front of him. When Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was asked once by a person, he says, "Oh Rasulullah, will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not grant me sustenance? Will he not grant me rizq?" Oh, alaykum as-salam wa rahmatullah. He says what? He says, what is it that you do that stops your rizq? And he begins to name the steps that a person can do that would stop his sustenance, that stop his rizq. One of the things that the Prophet mentions, he says what? He says, do you walk in front of your parents? He says, why? Of course I walk in front of my parents. He says, that's the reason why Allah has stopped your rizq, your sustenance. So on one hand it's respect, on another it's what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless you if you walk in respect and behind your father and mother. Now look at that particular faculty. On a third note, what does the Imam state? They state, do not act in a manner that will put your parents' reputation at risk. We find many people come and say what? Well, I'm going to go towards this particular location. I know this particular location has haram. No one will see me. Allah surely sees you. When a person sees you and word of mouth, and believe me brothers and sisters, the word of mouth doesn't leave anyone. One person sees you will find it that your parents know it before you even reach your household. Without a shadow of doubt. And it's happened many times before. As in there was a famous word that goes around, someone in the Arabian society falls down on the stairs, everyone in the area would find out. As in what? As in do not act in a manner. It's trying to instill the idea. Do not act in a manner in which someone will find out. In which if anyone will find out, your parents' reputation will be at risk. Anywhere which is haram, avoid it. Any place which is an inclination to become haram, avoid it. That's why the Quran in one of the narrations says what? وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خَطَوَاتُ الشَّيْطَانِ. Do not even follow the footsteps of shaitan. Not go towards sin. Do not follow the footsteps. Now the footsteps are examples, we've given it many aspects. But the most famous example I try to reiterate time and time again is the example of smoking. Because it's the most one that we can actually relate to. When we say do not even go in the footsteps, what is it trying to say? Do not even hang around those people that get you away from the remembrance of Allah. In what idea? In the idea that once upon a time you were in primary school. In primary school, you find that to gain respect of your friends, you try to be with them whatever aspect you can. Wherever they go, you try to be with them. and so forth, that you would even go towards them if they are smoking. Let's say a particular person smokes. You say, for example, I don't smoke. I know that smoking is bad. I know that if I go with this person, that people will look down upon me. How is it that you can hang out with a person in primary school that smokes? On the first level, this is the steps that I want to talk about. To avoid these steps, and I want to talk about friendship, and inshallah I'll end for tonight. When we look at the steps that take forth, the first step is what? When that particular person leaves school and goes towards the smoking area. You all know it's behind the buildings. When we look at the shopping centers, they try to avoid school. You first and foremost just go with him. On the first, you just go with him. You don't smoke, you just watch him. Time progresses, the first week, second week, 1 month. He comes to you and he says, just hold the cigarette. Don't touch it, just hold it. You're not smoking, you think to yourself, well, I'm just holding the cigarette. Another month comes. He says, just take 1 puff. Just 1 puff, it won't damage your lungs. Just 1 puff. You see, 1 year, 3 years after that, you're a chain smoker. And you're thinking to yourself, how on earth did I even take the first cigarette? Because you don't realize what you are doing. You don't realize the effect it will have. One day, it's like a boulder, as the Imams say. A sin is like a boulder. It hits you and it hits you hard. That's why you straight away go and repent. But when you keep going in those stages, it will become, as the Imams say, what? Like a fly that lands on you. You'll just shoo it away. That's how a sin becomes. Because you allow it to become persistent in your character. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ. Do not even follow the footsteps. Now put it into the reference of the parents. Let's look at it in the parents' perspective. You find in an Australian society, and this is a very important aspect, you find in the Western society that if people come take their fathers and mothers towards nursing homes, you find people come towards the school environment and they are cursing their parents. They're talking ill about their parents. You find particular people take legitimacy. They think to themselves that what? That because my friend such and such can swear about their parents or can raise their voice towards their parents, that it's okay if I do it. And we've seen many cases like this. And it goes on until one day it will even come to an aspect where they even lift their hands in the face of their parents. And the Quran says, don't even utter a sound in anger of your parents. People have the audacity to lift their voices. People have the audacity to raise their hands in front of their parents. Let's look at it in another aspect. The aspect of karma. And this is one of the most fearful aspects. Because the examples that we are given, on a modern day perspective, not in a historical perspective. I want to give you modern day perspectives. One from the Imams and one from modern day. Of the time of the Imams, let's look at it. In the olden times, there's a narration that says what? There was a particular person that took his father, reached an old age. He could not handle him because he had to take care of his every aspect. He could not go towards anywhere. He used to clothe him, dress him, take him towards the bathroom. It does not matter. He could take care of every single aspect of his life. He came to a stage that says what? I cannot handle my father anymore. He put him and carried him towards the deserts. This person carried his father towards the deserts. He saw a palm tree. He took his father, put his father under the palm tree. And you think to yourself, he's about to leave his father. Surely the father will begin to cry. Surely the father will begin to hold on to his son. We find the father begins to smile, laugh, then begin to cry. Why is it? So the son asks his father, he says, why is it that you act in this manner? What have I done that you may act in this manner? What was the reply of the father? He said, I do not blame you for what you have done. He says, why? He says, believe me, son, I did the same act that you are doing to my father. My father reached an old age. Would you believe it if I told you I took my father and I put him in a desert and left him to die? He says, I am not surprised that you do it to me. The son quickly goes, picks up his father, takes him home. He says, what are you doing? He says, I don't want my son to do to me what you did to your father. Giving you the idea of what? of karma. If you go towards those places which are haram, if you raise your voice in front of your parents, if you do anything to harm your parents, do not be surprised if one day your son or daughter will do the same to you. That's the idea that's given. Because, and I end on this inshallah, I've taken much of your time, and I thank you for your patience. But in this aspect, and it's a very important aspect, brothers and sisters, if you take anything from tonight, make sure you take this particular line that I am about to say and try to apply it into your lives. A person would come forth and say what? That I have taken care of my parents like they have taken care of me. Put it into perspective. Let's say a particular person takes care of his parents. He gives them wealth. He allows them a place, a shelter to stay. He gives them every source of sustenance. The idea is, has he repaid that kindness and treated them like his parents treated him? Let's look at this concept. And the answer to this concept is exactly what? Is never will the son or daughter repay his parents or her parents in the same manner that his or her parents have taken care of him. Why? Think of this aspect, brothers and sisters. When your parents are taking care of you, when your parents are nourishing you, when your parents give you sustenance, what's in the back of their minds? They're thinking to themselves, my son, my daughter, they have their vast future ahead of them. My son, my daughter will grow up to be wealthy, to be wise. They will gain knowledge. Surely one day they will find a spouse. They will marry. They will be happy in their lives. They will achieve greatness. An idea when they bring you up is what? Is all future aspirations for what you shall achieve. Now the reply is what? What kind of mentality and mindset do you have when you're taking care of your parents? The mentality is what? I take care of them 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. What aspirations do I have? At the end of the day, in reality, it's what? You're taking care of them until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes His amanah. You see where the difference lies? You see the difference in that, brothers and sisters? And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even in the Quran, go and look at it. Ummi, my mother, is only mentioned once in the Quran. Only once in Surah Al-Ma'idah. Giving you the idea that what? You only have one mother and one father. You lose that one mother or you lose that one father, surely you will not know what it is to lose that particular person. Only a person that has lost his mother or a father. And I tell you, when I speak to them, they say we regret even looking up at them. Why? It says we would always look back and say, I hope that I always lower my gaze when I look towards them. How dare I even think of a bad act when I think about them. They say we want the days to come back so we may kiss their hands and their feet and say we are sorry for anything that we have done. Brothers and sisters, the message I live tonight is what? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has still blessed you with a mother or father, know for a fact that go tonight and kiss their hands and their legs. Because Allah has given you blessings because of them. The root of your blessing, Imam Zayn al-Abidin says, is because of your father. And Imam Zayn al-Abidin has twice as much to say about the mother. Twice as much to say. Ummaka, 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 thumma abak. The rank of the mother is surely something so elevated that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has lowered the heavens to be under the feet of the mother. Remember that, brothers and sisters. And inshallah I leave you with this tonight. And inshallah we've gained even one aspect that we can apply it to our lives. I leave you on this note, inshallah, brothers and sisters. And we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He lengthens the lives of our mothers and fathers. And He may grant mercy and send mercy to the deceased mothers and fathers that we have, inshallah, in this crowd. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will you resurrect us, inshallah, amongst the companions of Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman. Oh Imam, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we pray to you to resurrect us amongst the companions of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen and the Muwaleen, ببركة سورة المباركة الفاتحة تسبقها الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.